Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back for EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Local is right here in the middle. You can see that the hypernode spam is still keeping up at the moment, and that's of course one of the really big changes which will potentially have had an impact on the market. I think for the skill injectors it will definitely have an impact on the market there. So there's definitely like some more expensive popular items that find their way in these raffles and that actually tend to be popular with people that want to gamble. Next up, it's also the season of gifts, so definitely try to log in after the downtime every single day so that you can redeem your gifts. The first ones were actually a really nice set of skins. I actually liked how they looked as well. Pretty cool that we got them for quite a few ships just out of the first set of gifts there. And then the daily login event where you can potentially get strange filaments that lead you into nullsec can be very cool. Might also be like a first attempt to see if some sort of more organized PvP is possible. Let's say that you can create filaments for just one ship and for a specific class of ship, and that instead of sending you, well, maybe even sending you into a very specific place in nullsec where, well, you can decide to try to fight, of course. So yeah, let's see how that experiment evolves. That could be very cool as well. And of course you can also potentially get skill points, but it is now based around throwing snowballs at NPCs, so that is something to remember. I found it really intuitive to actually turn my old melted snowballs into new ones. It does take 10 of them to create one snowball, so it's basically kind of expensive in that way, but overall it was not a problem to figure it out and to keep up with the what is it, the chilling spree is what it's called here. I only do that on my main. Honestly, this character is here for EVE Talk. So let's also take a quick look at the New Eden store. And we have a new skin, the Yaul Star skin. I think it looks really cool. Of course, we have a new item here as well, the controversial Hypercore. This is how CCP is monetizing the Hypernet Relay, because anyone that puts up a raffle has to pay Hypercores, which can only be bought here, basically. Let's take a quick look at that skin. It's actually really cool, although that one light effect that you see here, I don't think it's a part of that, but you do get this very nice light animation that goes across these ships. Ooh, man, ooh, here it is actually a little bit different. I'm not sure if I like it then like this. I'd rather have it fit on the skin, but this definitely makes it very unique on the Cerberus. Let's take a quick look here, for instance, on the avatar. Look at that, actually curved together with the skin, and then this goes. That's really nice. I wish it would like fill up the bar and then empty it, right? So you get 3 of them down here, and then you get the light that goes up. It would be very cool if it would fill up the bar and then empty it out again, and then go back. But perhaps that is a little bit different. On the arc, I think it looks very, very nice as well. Look at that, right across the front, and then on the Nyx, that should look really cool too. Right there, down the center of the ship. Very, very cool. Yep, I like the skin. I think it is definitely a beautiful skin with a good color scheme as well. Some red, nothing too much. Then some black and some white, but enough black here to offset that it doesn't become like too whitish. Although on Dominic's here you can see, well, the Dominic's is one of my favorite ships. No, look at that at the back and down here, plenty of black to offset it all, and then you've got the animation going across and above the ship. I'm not sure if I like it when it's floating like that, to be honest. I'd rather have it then fit here, or maybe fit on this side or something like that. But yeah, it's an animated skin that is out in the New Eden store. Other than that, didn't notice anything too special. Let's move on to the market. That is why everyone is here, of course. And as always, we're gonna start with some plex and stuff. That's gonna be at 440. Let's go. Let's take a look at plex, and Ingida sellers are below 3.5 million. Not what I expected. I thought that sellers would actually go up in price a little bit because of the Hypernet Relay. My thinking was that perhaps more people would, well, actually, if you have more supply, more people bringing plex to the market in order to create risk, in order to gamble on the Hypernet Relay, it is definitely a possibility. And we're up a little bit, but definitely not the bounce that I expected after this sale. I thought we would get back to the 3.5 million on the average prices much more quickly than that. Sellers in Jita at 3.5 million, buyers below 3.3 million. And then the sellers in the player-owned trade hubs are below 3.4 million ISK. And then the buyers, they stick to a price below 3.3 million. That is really pretty damn cheap and affordable for plex, so that is not bad. I wonder if it is fueled by Hypernet gambling. You know, if you just see more supply in order to partake in that activity. I would love to see some numbers on that at some point. Not sure if CCP will come out with that. Next up, we have the multiple pilot training certificate. That one did the bounce that I was expecting a little bit more, going above 1.5 billion, but also hesitating here in the last couple of days, basically flat above that level. 1.566 billion is for the sellers, 1.52 billion, very narrow margin here between sellers and buyers. And yeah, basically that hesitation above the 1.5 billion mark. I think it's an expression of the hesitation in plex that we are seeing as well. For the skill extractors, we have, of course, a chart that follows. Oh, and I should add the hypercores. I will add the hypercores. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm personally not really hyper. Okay, let's try that. Hypercore. Add to the market quick bar, add that here in the plex stuff. At first it's not going to be great, but let's pick back up here on the skill extractors. So these follow plex very closely, of course, bouncing off the 380 mark on the low end and are currently selling for 381 million ISK, buyers at 374. So that margin is closing as well as the market hesitates here at the tail end. You can see the 5-day moving average not following through and basically going flat at a pretty low price range. A bit of surprise to me personally. Now this should be the first impact. Large skill injectors, there we go. That is a big boost here from the 2nd of December, going up from, what is this price? I have a new mouse and I'm still not really used to it. 830, and then peaks at 890 million ISK. Currently selling for 864, and the buyers are coming in at 833. So this is one of the impacts from the Hypernet, because these large skill injectors were definitely on day one of the most popular items to put in these raffles, put in a lot of tickets, and people were willing to gamble for a large skill injector. Of course, if you divide the price by 512 tickets, you get a very low barrier to entry, but it was also always very expensive. The total price of the raffle was way more than the 800 plus 830 million that these large skill injectors were going for, and in fact it was by such a large margin that people just decided to buy up lots of large skill injectors, driving the price up and then trying to sell them at a nice profit through the Hypernet Relay. I think lots of people will have been successful. The fact that we're going back down a little bit at the tail end, though, I think does mean that we have a slowdown, at least in this item, when it comes to the Hypernet Relay trades, and that a sort of balance is found. We get a little bit, of course, of a hype overbounce back towards 900 million in short order. But for people that then invested early November for less than 800 million ISK, that would, of course, have been a golden time to, in about a month time, make a 1/8 profit on that investment. That is definitely not bad. Let's see if the small scale injectors followed suit. Yes, and in fact these are continuing. They don't have that pullback here, so these might be like a little bit more under the radar, but continuing to be traded at a good profit in the Hypernet Relay. Probably an even lower barrier of entry, of course, because this is far cheaper than the large scale injector, and newer players might find it attractive to try and get that small scale injector for just a fraction of the price. Currently these are selling for 182 million ISK, buyers coming in at 165. You can see a pretty big margin here, and the sellers have been able to drive their price up. Look at the volume increase as well. preparing, and then after the Hibernate relay it is definitely very noticeable. Oh, I'm not really sure how the lack of downtime is going to show up on the charts here. I hope that all of that is okay, but that's definitely an experiment that on some point is going to have an impact on the market as well. Then we have the daily alpha injectors that are continuing to stay well below average. 38 million, less than that for the sellers, 33 million, even below that for the buyers. That is really cheap, of course, but keep in mind this item is a little bit different. Only alpha clone characters can use them, and especially now I don't see a big increase in demand there because, well, these gifts, you gotta be Omega to really take advantage of those, and I think lots of people actually will jump on the chance. And then finally we get the hypercore. This chart of course shows next to nothing, but we started on the first day for 380,000 ISK per hypercore. Right now these are selling for less than 350,000 ISK, buyers coming in at 330. This will of course find its way into a balance situation with Plex as well, because it is another item here. We are going to add it to the roster and we'll keep an eye on that. This might be an indication if we have a discrepancy between the hypercores and the Plex prices on the popularity of the Hypernet raffles. That means that we can move on to the mineral market. That's coming in at 11.15. Here, as I've said, I think that we could at some point in the future see an impact on the lack of daily maintenance. CCP wants to get rid of that, maybe get to something like a weekly maintenance or something like that. I'm not sure if that's going to be easily manageable, but this could have an impact on the mineral market, because of course CCP needs to then look into the respawn, the way resources respawn in the game, maybe up the totals, but you know, pretty much regardless what we know that CCP, what they choose, we know that CCP wants to come with a more dynamic resource regeneration system in order to, well, try to get more conflict in the game, try to get people to move around as well. And so it might be the opportunity that they're waiting for. This could still be months and months down the line, but if CCP at some point does manage to substantially and continuously reduce the number of downtimes, they might take that as an opportunity to add in a random aspect to the resource regeneration, and that will then potentially have a big impact on the mineral market. Right now, I don't think that that is a driving force just yet on the mineral market. We can see that titanium is basically pretty flat above 5 ISK on the chart. It's up a little bit, 530 for the sellers in JITA. We get some sellers in perimeter, 72 million units, not bad, but it's not a lot compared to the 1.5 billion units that are coming in here, and the buyers are down to just shy of 5 ISK here, 498 for the first one. Titanium able to defend its price of 5 ISK at the moment, pretty much flat, so more hesitation. Pyrite, same thing, also at 5 ISK and flat landing on that one. 512 for the sellers, 499 for the buyers. Pretty much the same situation for pyrite and for titanium, which is of course kind of crazy if you look at how much titanium you get from ores compared to how much pyrite you get from ores. But that is of course all part of that old mineral and rebalance story, the change to the Orca, Rorcal, moon mining, all of that is a part of that. Next up here we got Mixlon that was struggling at a 1-year low point, went to less than 40 ISK, slowly trying to get back up here, but I think that this is just a move to the upper range, trying to head towards 45, probably won't even succeed on that. 43 for the sellers and less than 40 ISK still for the buyers, and basically I think that this will then be seen as an opportunity. The closer we get to 45 ISK, I think the closer we get to more supply and a crashing down of the price. Again, I don't see a breakout just yet. It would be nice, of course, to get a bit more back for your mining, but right now Mexon is still struggling slightly on the upswing, but I think we're basically going to start to move between 45 and 35 ISK in the foreseeable future here. For Isogen, we also have a bit of a move away from those low points. When below 12.5 ISK, that's crazy low for Isogen, goes to almost 15 ISK for the sellers and just shy of 14 ISK for the buyers, so a bit of a move up here in Isogen as well, some ISK flowing into that market. After that, we get the Noxium that also went to a 1-year low point as low as, let's see here, 210 ISK. We're pulling back to 225 for the sellers and 215 for the buyers. Very narrow margin, but this is just a little bit of a bounce away from that low point where investors basically grabbed some positions on super cheap Noxium. It is still not looking great. Next up, we've got Zydrine that is well, hesitating and tried to hold on to 500 ISK for most of the year. Right now we're below that, so I think we're trying to defend 450 to 500. It's 492 for the sellers and 460 for the first buyer. So that is exactly our new range. It is kind of depressing if you're a miner, of course, to see these prices continue to go down. But after the Gnostic blackout, stability basically did come back in the really large coalitions that are dominating Rorcal mining. For instance, there are losses, there are conflicts. We saw a very nice video from CCP about Triglavians, about phase 2, but also about conflicts in Nullsec. I think like a guest speaker as well from another YouTube channel. Can't really remember the name right now, but very impressive work there. There is conflict, but it is not on such a scale that it can make a difference on the large economic output of some of the really big groups there. So 350 for Megasite, 351 for the sellers and 328 for the buyers. Bit of a bump up here again, but coming from that 1-year low point. So this is basically again the market trying to take some positions, trying to grab everything below 350 and hoping that at some point in the future they get an actual return on that. After that, we have Morphite left. Morphite is still doing very well. Went very close to 10,000 ISK, but already bounced back to a well above average price here. 11,730 for the sellers and 10,800 for the buyers. The one strong performer here, of course, because it is different from all the other minerals. I'm not even sure if you can get Morphite from a moon, and of course it's also tied to the Tech 2 ship economy rather than the Tech 1 economy. So this means more of the same cheap Tech 1 ships normally, and we are still oversupplied compared to the consumption, I would say, of New Eden at the moment. If you look at these 1-year low prices, except for Pyrite, Zydrine is pretty low, Noxium 1-year low, Mixlon 1-year low, and Isogen 1-year low as well. That's all going to keep the prices well in check. That also means affordable Tech 1 ships, of course. Every story has a different side. Next up, we've got the PI market coming in at 1730. Trying to make a little bit of time here because the request for the extra product is compressed stuff, and that's actually quite a lot to take a look at. So let's go here for the broadcast nodes, continuing on the slow downtrend here, back to a less than average price for broadcast nodes. That's, I think, still gonna be the story. Here we basically also don't have enough demand for the supply. Sellers are just below 2.1 million, but buyers are below 1.9 million. That is definitely really cheap for broadcast nodes here, well below average. Next up, we have the construction blocks, again trying to climb out of the rut, right? A big dive down to less than 8,500 ISK in October is slowly trying to recover, but definitely struggling to get back to that 10,500 average price. 10,000 ISK for the sellers, 10,300 for most of them, 9,500 for the buyers. We're basically still below average here as well. I thought we would recover more quickly from that, but I guess not that much hype from the chapter 2 of the invasion so far. It's really a Nullsec war, I think, that could create hype to really turn all of this around in a more substantial way. I have some PI positions myself, especially some advanced PI positions, and so either a Nullsec, something happening in Nullsec, like the Imperium deciding to raise another region, could have a big impact here. Of course, FanFest, another structure announcement, could do the same. Consumer electronics tried to get back to that 12,000 ISK, but look at that, already back down to well below average range at this point. You'd think that sellers would have the patience to wait for 12,500 ISK to realize to come in with the sales and drive the price back down, but we can't even do that. 11,600 for the first seller, 10,900 for the buyers. Yeah, that is again really below average by quite a lot. Next up we have coolants, the one of the exceptions tied to fuels. It's going to be part of the reason why it's an exception, but there's others that are doing really badly. So overall, basically coolants doing really well. 14,000 for the sellers and 12,000 for the buyers. It's a decent margin, but even these buyers are actually right on their average, and then we're selling above average. So that's definitely one of the exceptions. Another one is going to be the cryoprotectant solutions. We're keeping an eye on those because they are used in the new triglavian implants for the manufacturing of those. And it looks like 150 was not enough for the market. Demand's up again, 176 now, 176,000 discs for the sellers, 136,000 for the buyers. That is of course a very nice double jump up, and right now that price went up from 110 to 175. That is a very significant profit of course to be taken. It shows, I think, that the triglavian ships are very popular, slightly overpowered as well probably. So do expect maybe like the line and the hype to continue, and then at some point when the triglavians will be established, we will probably see some serious nerfing of triglavian ships as well. It is the endless cycle in a sandbox of course. Right now though, cryoprotectant solutions, very profitable. Enriched uranium jumps back up to 14k. Okay, that's impressive. Let's see if it's been able to maintain that price. 14,200 for the sellers, 12,800 for the buyers though, so be careful of that margin. But enriched uranium, tied to fuels as well, has managed to jump back to its average price for the year. That's pretty impressive. Integrity response drones, more bad news or more opportunities of course for investors. 2.2 million for the sellers, less than 2.2 million for the buyers. Super narrow margin, but look at this average chart. Normally we'd pay 2.4 million for integrity response drones, and we're still at 2.2, which is pretty much below the first 10 months of this chart. So definitely showing this lack of demand, this oversupply. Well, I don't think that we've got like any reasons to expect more supply to be coming in. It's just a lack of demand here. People are slowing down, I think, their structured productions as people get established. Mechanical parts trying to climb back, but I would still say that we are below average here. 11,000, well actually 11,400, 11,500 for the sellers, getting very close there again. Keep in mind mechanical parts is also tied to fuels. 10,000 for the sellers though, for the buyers though, so that is a pretty wide margin opening up again. So mechanical parts is trying to get back to the average. Is not there just yet, but the sellers are definitely very close. Organic mortar applicators went to one year low below a million ISK here. You can see the investment, the increased volumes, and that is driving the price up a little bit, but still less than 1.05 million for the sellers and still below a million for the buyers. If you look at this full 1 year chart, we're definitely still below average. After that, we've got our robotics. That is also tied to fuels, and one that is not doing too well, staying at that 90,000 ISK range. 90,000 for the sellers, 88,000 for the buyers is well below average, and I would almost call it an opportunity, but keep in mind the volatility in robotics is very small. Going from 90,000 to 110,000 is not that big of a range for a full 1 year chart here. Self-harmonizing power cores, advanced PI, it's more of the same of course. Below 2 million for the sellers, below 1.9 million for the buyers, with quite a bit of competition trying to grab these cheap self-harmonizing power cores. You can see that here on all these buyers going and basically one is king each other quite a little bit. After that, we've got the superconductors. These went to a 1 year low point of less than 9,000 disks, still trying to recover, but yeah, we would need to see 12,000, 12,500 on the sellers to get back to that average. We're still very far away from that. 11,000 for the sellers, 10,000 for the buyers, well below average for superconductors. I myself produce these because there are some good plans for that in detail, but that means I'm hoarding them, I am not selling them. Then we've got test cultures, also one of the exceptions, but an understandable exception if you know that this is also a refined PI material. Most of these 11, 12,000 disc on the averages, even 14,000 for stuff like Ethereum. That's a bit harder to make. This went down to 7,000 disc and basically came down from that normal 10, 11,000 disc range for an easy to produce item for a very, very long time. So this is basically a recovery, bringing this back in line with other refined PI materials. 11,400 disc for the sellers is a great price, of course, if you look at this 1 year chart. 9,000 for the buyers. These are still lagging behind, a little bit hesitant to pay that much more for test cultures. They've had it so good for so long that I think there is some hesitation here. But this is a nice sell opportunity, especially if you invested early last summer, bought this stuff for 6,000 disc. You're practically doubling your ISK here in half a year. That is definitely a great investment and time to sell. But keep one thing in mind, this is a refined PI material. This is not that strange, that unusual a price. This is maybe a 1 year high point, but this is not a crazy price either. Oops, and I definitely made a mistake here. That's really the new mouse here that I bought. It's a bit too fickle. I have to get used to learning how to use it properly. Here's the wetware mainframes. Yep, try to get back to an average price here at the tail end, but already being snuffed back down by more supply. 2.15 million for the sellers, a bit above 2 million for the buyers. It's still decent, but yeah, if you can get it close to 2 million, you can see that it is clearly below average. Next up, the advanced moon materials coming in at 25.45. Like that. Oh yeah, now that I think about it, the video from CCP was actually also in big part about a high-sec war, so like some war-dict corporations that organized and actually fought back against the war deckers, which was the whole point of the changes to the war deck mechanics. And so I think that's actually really awesome stuff. Might want to get in. I've actually been thinking about getting into that type of stuff as well at this point. So yeah, for the why do I say that? Advanced moon materials, definitely a little bit dependent on some NASIC conflict to show some volatility. I don't think that will be happening. So crystalline carbonites is trying to recover, but look at where it's coming from. A daily average of 140 ISK. We're back to 170 for the sellers, 155 for the buyers. Basically 170. That's not bad actually. 170 for the sellers. Okay, well, a bit of a drying up here all of a sudden in crystalline carbonites, and sellers are above average. Buyers are still at 155, which is around its average price range. Okay, not what I expected, but crystalline carbonites actually moved up quite violently, and the sellers for some reason are able to ask 170 ISK. Next up we have a Fernite carbide that went to a low point of 125, but you can see some data points definitely going up here as well. And yeah, 138 for the sellers, 128 for the buyers. We have some new orders here, almost a full front page as well, so it's not like it's a complete drying up of the market here. No, back a recovery, still below average, but definitely moving away from that bottom range all of a sudden. Okay, not what I expected. Titanium carbide, same thing. This one was very clearly though at the low point at 166 on the average here, back up to 179, buyers at 173. At least it's an uptick. It's also not back to an average price, but it's an uptick here as well. And then we have tungsten carbide that had an uptick last week, and unfortunately, if this is like a canary in the coal mine, if this is a predictor for the others, it is getting squashed pretty quickly, unfortunately. So we went above 175. We're still at 178 for the sellers and 174 for the buyers. Okay, that's actually not that bad for the pullback that we're seeing here in the 5-day moving average. So the carbides, all of them in an uptick, and one of them to an above average price. I'm very surprised to see that, honestly. Next, the others, that pullback from 1 year low point is actually kind of normal. Next up we have our metamaterials. Photonic metamaterials are going back down after also pulling back, right? 16,000 ISK basically pushing back up, and now we're basically landing there again. 16,700 for the sellers, 16,300 for the buyers, back to a below average price. Plasmonic metamaterials, here is a sharp drop off to 1 year low point. Let's take a look at the prices now. Less than 17,000 discs for the sellers, 16,600 for the buyers. Very pronounced opportunity. Of course, in my opinion, you're buying below the entire chart at less than 17,000 discs. Plasmonic metamaterials, yeah, it's up to you to decide, but definitely something that I think is worth a GTAT trip for me personally. I hope I find the time because I know this is Eve, but a new league is out as well in Path of Exile, so I'll have to try and make a good schedule for myself. Non-linear metamaterials, look at that volume spike. That is kind of crazy for a non-move in the price. Staying at 22,500 here, 22,000 for the sellers. That's just a couple of them. It's almost 23 for most of them, and then 19,000 for the buyers. It's a pretty wide margin, and the fact that the price has been able to stay at the seller's range is actually pretty impressive. If we look at this 1 year chart, though, clearly below average. And then finally we've got terahertz metamaterials that has known some violent downswings, at least a violent downturn to less than 20,000 disc. Recovered a bit from that in a pretty impressive fashion, but it is not to last. We are back down to less than 20,000 for the sellers, 16,000 for the buyers. I think here it is yet again a bit of a lack of demand compared to the supply that is causing all these troubles. This is nice and volatile. You could make some trades on that, but it is very risky because of course we're staying below the average range here. I personally would not partake in gambling on buying here and then selling here already. No, I would buy at the 1 year low points and then wait for a true recovery of the market. That's mostly how I try to do my trades. We still have some other materials to look at as well. Here is fermionic condensates. Again, 1 year low point, recovered back to 90,000 disc, which is still below average. And then we have the pressure back here, 86,000 now for the sellers, 83 for the buyers. Ferrogel, 1 year low point, bit of a bounce, but obviously we're not getting back to that 45k range. It's still at 38,000 for the sellers, 36,000 for the buyers. Still very cheap, but you get that slight volume increase, so you do have some investors taking care of business, basically buying everything below the 38,000 range as an investment. It doesn't even take that much in the volumes to do so. Fullerides managed to defend 1,000 disc pretty well in the last month or so, not to last here, down to 966 and 910 for the buyers. Hypersynaptic fibers also decently flat with a slight downtrend at the end at a below average range is what I want to say. Nano transistors, also a big dive, so you can try, but the timing has to be absolutely right? Diving down to 5,000 disc, right now you're already selling that back for 5,500 disc. It's only 10%, but it is 10% that happens in like a week time or so. So you can do it, but timing is very difficult, and being able to grab the right items and then sell exactly at the right time is going to be super important if you want to ride the volatility in the advanced move materials, because unfortunately most of it is taking place below the average ranges. Phenolic composites, same thing here, went down to 1750, then back up to 2250, back to the average, but it is not to last. We're already back down to 2,144. Bars are just above 2,000 disc, and so these opportunities get filled very quickly with fresh supply. And then finally we've got ceramic fibers, also went to 300 disc, 1 year low point, recovering from that, back up to 400 for the sellers, 385, 300 to 400, not bad, right? But very, very difficult to actually do. So the advanced advanced move materials, I think are struggling under the same problem. We've got a little bit of a lack of demand, but I do feel that there are some more investors watching this market closely, trying to take advantage of 1 year low points, and sometimes actually driving the price up very quickly to close to average price. There are opportunities here, but there's also more risk here as well. I think we gotta be honest on that. Volatility, but in a very bad range. Next up, we have our Tech 2 ships. Let's see how it translates here at 3320. Right, been able to make a good time here. Also a request, I think I'll just try to honor that. Eagle ships at the market quick bar. Let's do that. I think that that one has basically regained its place in the meta in nullsec, although we're not gonna start with that, of course. After the nerf of the Munin, I think it was. Here is the Ares. That one is staying above 25 million, able to defend that range. 26 million for the sellers, 24 million for the buyers. But look at this, 600 of them and 83 of them coming in here. Quite not that many sell orders, but so many ships here that is going to drive the price back down again, I think. So this is clearly more supply than what the market can handle, and a willingness to sell them at this price in very large numbers. So don't expect this to pick up unless something happens in nullsec. This is definitely below average. Basilisk next nice recovery, but again keep in mind a recovery from a 1-year low point of 180 million ISK. We're back up above 230, or at least we were last week. It's still 233 for the sellers, 214 for the buyers. It is a nice recovery, but this is not a crazy price by any means. This is still slightly below average, so that pattern does seem to come back here. But honestly, it's a lot easier, I think, to buy one basilisk at 180 and then try to sell it at 230, get that profit from a single trade, than to risk the same moves in advanced move materials. So that's why I personally prefer the Tech 2 ships when it comes to trying to eke out a profit on low points. I think Tech 2 ships are quite often the right choice. Cerberus, same thing. Look at that, went as low as 210 million ISK, shooting back at 280, recovering very quickly, but it's still 256 for the sellers, 226 for the buyers. There's definitely profits to be seen here over the course of the last 2 months or so. So very impressive actually that that moonshot here to 280, close to 1-year high point. Super impressive. Already on the recovery, of course, that gets filled very quickly. Again, timing is everything when it comes to trying to make ISK this way. Very difficult to materialize, but it is definitely possible to get a nice chunk of profit on a single trade. That's what's so important in my opinion. You don't need hundreds of thousands of units of advanced materials. You need one ship, and then there you go. Several tens of millions are easily made there. Crow very flat at a below average range here, so that's not where we want to be. 28.5 for the sellers, 25 for the buyers. 25 million is the very low end of the chart, so that's a gamble to take. Of course, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 very clear peaks here with a high of 35 million. 25 to 35, not bad. When will it happen? That is difficult to say, of course. Here's our new ship. The Eagle went to a 1-year low point, went to less than 200 million ISK, of course. So clearly something happened here about half a year ago as well that caused the Eagle to lose its status, and now it is a slight recovery, but nothing that major. It is 225 for the sellers, but still 182 for the buyers. They are waiting and seeing if a true recovery is going to happen. This is a very cheap price for the Eagle. I thought we'd see more of an average price back to the 250 range. That is obviously not happening. Yeah, cheap Eagles, guys, if you want to fly them as part of the meta. Next up here we get the Guardian, and that is of course what tends to happen. We went to a low point of 200 million, nice recovery to 250. You can definitely make some profit on this one, but then the volumes do drop off very quickly, and then of course more comes in, and we're back down to the 200 million range. 187 in fact for the buyers, 214 to 215 for the sellers. Back to a less than average price here for the Guardian. Heretic interdictors, I'm gonna keep an eye on them, but keep in mind, in my opinion, this is something that you should have at least one of them or so. 50 million for the buyers, 63 million for the sellers, completely out of the meta, but also this is a big gamble on CCP, especially I would say CCP Rise with Team Talos looking at this and doing something for the interdictors. But I think it's worth it to at least grab some of these because these charts are kind of crazy. 50 million for a Tech 2 advanced destroyer is actually really cheap in my opinion. Look at that, below the chart by a mile again here, all the way down here at 50 million. You've had the chance to do so for more than a year. When it does happen, or if it does happen, I think I should say at this point, that CSP revisits the interdictors and these shoot up and you get a massive profit. You've had plenty of opportunities to do so. I'm gonna keep an eye on them for it to happen. I think I have some interdictors lying around here and there, bought at cheap prices. Hunt recovery to 30 million ISK, that is not bad. 31 million now for the sellers, 24 million for the buyers. In fact, did I put them in trying to sell? Yeah. I've tried to make my trades on these stealth bombers. Hounds bought for 22, sold for 30. Manticore, same thing. Purifier, same thing. And if you look at this here, the hounds will have been sold, considering that my sell order is nowhere to be seen. That's like a 7 million probably net profit for every one of them. And I think I did it with a volume of 5 along this range. So yeah, a little bit, these are the trades that I personally am looking for. I noticed the bottoms, I think it was here in October, bought for 22 million, now sold for 30 million. Not the best potential, but very easily manageable if you don't go crazy with the number of ships that you have, or that you try to do this with. The Ishtar is flat right in the middle of the chart, so that's not a good place to try anything with the Ishtar. 239 for the sellers, 210 for the buyers, decently narrow margin as well, just around 10%. Then the Manticore, same story. I think I bought here or here, 22 million. I think it's here, right, in October, 22 million. 2.5 months later, we're back at 30 million. Yep, exactly. Look at that. Just below 30 million for the sellers, and I sold for 29.9. I wanted to be certain that I sold them, and so that's what I did, and I got the trade done. Nice. Next up here we get the Munin. Recovering from that 20-year low point, went below 200 million, back to 214 for the sellers, but again, buyers are at 189. There is definitely also a lack of demand in the Tech 2 ship market, but sometimes it tends to come back, and that's when you can make your trades, I think, more reliably. Haven't tried to sell the Nemesis, and this is why it did go up to 30 million ISK, but it was so short-lived, I basically missed it, because when I was looking and selling the other stealth bombers, it just wasn't there, the range. And we're already back down to 22.7 for the sellers, 18 million for the buyers. I bought these for, if I'm not mistaken, 21 million. Yep. So I'm still somewhere in between this, but I need more patience to make a return on the Nemesis. On Nero's next, jumped up to 240, is already back down as well. 218, 19 for most sellers, 205 for one, 177 million. Look at that margin, 218 to 177. That's a crazy big margin considering where the buyers start off. And yeah, that is very, very difficult, I think, to make any trades in this. Volumes will be abysmal. You might, with a lot of luck and a lot of patience, like grab one ship, but very, very risky trading despite the volatility that we're seeing here. Purifiers should be that same story. Right now selling for 29 million, buyers at 25 million, but you can clearly see that we went above 30 for a little bit. So this is again a a little bit above 2-month trade where I bought for 22, sold for just shy of 30. Saber, another interdictor, a bit of volatility up to 72.5, but crashing down very quickly. Buyers are at less than 60 million ISK, also really cheap, not as good as the Heretic. Honestly, if you'd want to get on that interdictory balance train, if you want to take that gamble, try to go for a Heretic at that crazy low price, in my opinion. Then we get the Scimitar, still struggling at the low end, less than 200 million, 204 for the sellers, 176 million for the buyers. Potential investment right there, in my opinion, because you're buying below the entire chart by quite a bit again. And then we get the Stiletto that is managing to stay flat just below 30 million. It's very impressive, super narrow margin compared to all the others here. So the Stiletto is still doing absolutely fine. Yeah, there is clearly in a lot of these ships a complete lack of demand. These create opportunities, but things to be careful of. Don't buy too many of them. It's not easy to trade them. I did what I think was the easiest tradable Tech 2 ship here, the stealth bombers, and I did it with 5 of them, right? Not even 10 of them or anything like that, just 5 stealth bombers, around 100 million in investment, got that profit, 22 to 30 million, and I'm very happy with that. With the cruisers, I think next to logistics, cruisers definitely have that volatility there as well. Can actually last on that peak for several days, so you can make those trades. But honestly, I'd go with one ship at the time on these as well. And from that perspective, a scimitar for less than 180 does look very juicy. Next up, the Tech 3 ship market coming in at 43.25. Actually gonna drink a little bit. It's just water from a bottle. But let's get started here. The Tech 3 ship market. Actually, I'll write down 43.40. Like that, and here we go. Confessor. Oh, that is not good news. Exactly what I was fearing. So we were at a 1-year low point, 35 million. Managed to stay there for quite a little bit, but to me, the specter of oversupply never went away. We still saw really big numbers in the individual sell orders, and here is the next leg down towards 32.5 million. We're talking 34.3 for the sellers and 30 million for the buyers. Historically speaking, this starts to look very interesting. And despite that, here's the bad news. Still half a page with one seller of 79 units. That is still too much for the market, but this starts to look interesting. If we can get below 30 million, in my opinion, no brainer to start to invest in that. But this is exactly what I was fearing after pretty much a year of fantastic tactical destroyer market situations, with a healthy market, decent supply, enough demand as well, everything was nice and balanced, them communicating between each other. When one went higher, you got more supply there, which actually caused the price of the others to increase. It was beautiful to see. It was not too lost. Usually I've seen this happen in the summer, but now we actually have a real winter slump happening for the tactical destroyers, at least here for the Confessor. Oversupplied to 1-year low points, 30 million for the buyers. Starts to look very interesting to try and make a trade on these as well. Next up we get the Hecate. Here is why you do want to be fast, and timing is always everything. 1-year low point as well, went as low as 37 million and went back up here all of a sudden to 45 million on the charts. Sellers are back to 45 million. Buyers though, that's the real that's the rub here, still down to 35.6 million. And look at the numbers here. Last 24 hours, almost a full page with 57, 56, 73, 44 as the latest one. Competition is very harsh. This will go back down very quickly in my opinion. But that is of course the volatility that you want to bank on. Right now, Confessor 1-year low point, if you buy them just above 30 million and then you get a moonshot like that as well to 40 million, you of course have a very, very nice situation. So that Hecate boost here, maybe a bit of a surprise, but keep in mind it's coming from a 1-year low point, so this is not that crazy either. Investors, maybe a big alliance deciding it's definitely time to stock up on our Hecates. We're buying a lot of them, driving the price back up. So the next few weeks are going to be really important, seeing how the others cope with this peak and how quickly this one goes back down to that less than average price. Next up here we get the Jackdaw. That one is still below 40 million, slowly going down here. So try to recover from 35 to 40, but I think it is not too lost. 39 million for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers. And look at that latest sell order, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. 119 units. Despite the fact that people are already hesitating to bring more Jackdaws to the market, the numbers just remain too high. And then finally we've got the Zweepel that is still below 35 million as well. 36 for the sellers, 24 million for the buyers, and that is everywhere. Okay, that is also really, really crazy. 24 million, that you can't even see that on the chart here. That's how low this is. And despite that, we still have new supply coming in, including 38 units here. Definitely struggling. Now the Hecate and Jackdaw situations they do put things into perspective. I would say, yep, Confessor, grab a couple of those at 30 million, very good thing. Zweepel's at 25 million, very good thing as well. It's very, very it's looking very nice actually to at least try a limited investment here already in the tactical destroyer market. What should worry you though is that the numbers remain pretty high despite these low prices as well. Across the board, I think still more than what the market can handle. We could see even lower points, but that volatility in the Hecate might mean that there is enough ISK in the market to actually sustain higher prices as well. It's the risk that you have to take. Honestly, that's the risk of trying to make trades in the market. Confessor looks good, Zweepel looks good, and these two, you know, to me are indications that it might be time to try to jump in. Next up, we have our cruiser markets. Here is the Legion going back up to 160, back to its average price, 170 for the sellers, 143 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, full page, 24.18. Okay, that's actually also, yeah, quite a lot, 47 in fact, 14 in fact, and we're still in the last 24 hours. This is going to drive the price back down very quickly again. So there is some volatility here. We get quite a few Legions brought to the market. Here is the Loki at 180, also its average price. 180 for the sellers, 167 for the buyers. And look again in the last 24 hours, full front page with like another almost 100, I think, in the last 24 hours. Competition is coming back for the sales of these strategic cruisers at these average prices. I do fully expect this to go back down at this point. Next up, we've got a Proteus, also flat a little bit at 150, slightly below average. It's 150 for the sellers, 135 for the buyers. And again, look at the last 24 hours, full front page, plenty of them coming in. I think we'll see another pullback. And then the Tengu slowly trying to recover, but staying well below average actually on its price. 157 million for the sellers, 136 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, again, look at that, 2 pages. Here we get 100 of them, here we get another 100 of them. Yeah, tactical. Then that looks really bad for the Tengu actually. Most of the others at least recovered to an average price, but the Tengu looks massively oversupplied from that perspective. The others are probably going to go back down at this point, and so that means that you could, for the Legion for instance, you could have bought these for 130 and try to sell them now for 170. It's definitely a trade, but I think that the volumes will be kind of bad. Yeah, the higher the price, the lower these volumes. Very difficult to actually do that trade, in my opinion. A lot harder than the Tech 2 ship market, and the tactical destroyer market. But it is your choice to make. There's definitely opportunities if we look at the trends right now, and I think at this point we're peaking. There's too many ships coming to the market. We're gonna go back down to less than average prices. And for the Tengu, I have to be honest, if this continues, that is going to drive the price to one new low point, and that could be a massive opportunity. Look for a 130 million range. It's already at 136 for the buyers. This one is something to keep an eye on because of its weird situation with lots and lots of supply in the last 24 hours, despite the fact that it did not recover as well as the others. That's going to be it for the Tech 3 market. Then we have the request compressed stuff. It was actually ores and ice. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that because that is a very, very massive list, but we'll try to make the most of it. 5125 compressed stuff. And that means the best way to go for that is actually to look for it, because it is, I think like that, because it is, there's both ice and ores, and then every single one of them, for instance, Arcan ore is then one aspect. You get Arcan ore, all the different kinds with the compressed ones. So I think it's best to just go for compressed, but you can see how big this list is. So we're just gonna go look for some trends. Let's start with compressed Arcan ore here. Definitely struggling. I think that was also part of the message and the reason why they wanted me to look at this. Average price 350,000. This currently compressed Arcan ore selling for 277. Buyers are at 238. You can clearly see that after the summer again we get a pretty big slump, and we're actually struggling at 1 year low points at this point. Compressed Azure Plague Class A, same thing. First half of the year pretty good, 6,000 disc here, and then the massive struggle after the summer down to 4,500 disc, lost around 1/4 of its value, trading at 4,800 for the sellers, 4,600 for the buyers. Let's see if there's more of that. Here compressed Bistot clearly also trading pretty low. Maybe compressed Veldspar could be one to look at, or Pyroxeres, I think. Same pattern, very same pattern here. Look at that. After the summer went down substantially. This to me, let's take a quick look. Where the hell is Veldspar? Here it is. All right, stronger summer, but then going back to that 1500 range. Do we have compressed dense Veldspar? That could be one of the best to move. Same thing here. I'm gonna give you guys my theory again. I actually mentioned it in the mineral segment several times. During the nullsec blackout, nullsec actually adapted a lot to the higher risk of mining by really going for lots of moon mining, and that gave them the chance to tweak the minerals that they grab from the moons to really suit their needs the most. And that meant that, well, stuff like Mixlon, which was at a premium because it is normally a bottleneck in nullsec, actually went to a 1-year low point. Same thing with Noxium, and unfortunately that also means that there is less need to move the ores around for the minerals, and thus compression loses value as well if the big nullsec empires have basically made themselves less reliant on just the average mining, but they've actually also tweaked their mixes to their needs from their moons. And I think that's basically what happened here. Lots of these have been showing that. Brilliant, nice. Same thing here, look at that, went to lost 50% of its value, started at 150,000 disk, went down to 170, is now recovery back to 120, but clearly after the nullsec blackout you have this crash in the value of a lot of these compressed ores. Very clear trend here. This is ice, so that is not so good. Let's see, spodumene, I'm not sure how common that one is, actually managing to have a peak in the blackout and then to just recover back to its average. But for most of them, this one is really strange. Hemorphyte, also clearly below average at this point. We can try Jaspit here again, right? July, August, and then nullsec blackout ends. The value of compression just goes down. Now let's also take a look at some of these ices. Oof, that's unexpected. But very interesting. 1-year low point for compressed blue ice. Normal value 280,000 disk, down to less than 200 for the sellers, 195 for the first buyer. Really bad. Compressed icicles also at a 1-year low point. Is glitter also ice? That one is doing a little bit better, struggling at the end though. And let's see, I don't know all of them by heart, but this is also ice ores, doing okay. Glacial mass, that's at a 1-year low point. Yeah. I'm not sure how to explain. Well, actually, fuels are very low at the moment as well. So it could just be that there's lots of ice mining happening as well, causing prices for that, for those parts to crash. Let's take a quick look at silvery umber. No, I thought that one would be popular enough to get a good chart, but it is not. Vicious Pyroxeris, yeah, here we go, another one showing that trend. 5,000 disk, a little bit of a peak on the blackout, but after that down to 4,000 disk, losing 1/5 of its value. And I hope that all those sounds outside didn't come through too much. Very annoying, but alright. I don't think that we have to spend that much more time here in the compressed market. It is clear that compression has lost a lot of its value after the nullsec blackout, and I think my explanation holds water. Moon mining is very popular, it was far more defensible, and if you're going to up your moon mining percentages anyways, why not also tweak what you're getting out of the moons, grab the right moons for your production cycles, thus lowering your need for imports, lowering the value of compression. I think that's what's happened there. If you have any other insights, feel free to post those in the comments. I would love to hear about them. For now, that's going to be it for this EVE Talk. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.